So, welcome to a very special episode of the Kinky Christian podcast. We are so excited about this episode. It's been a little bit in the making, and we've got something very special for you this time. Right, Kitten?
Right.
What do we have?
We've been blessed with an interview with director Max Carey and talking about his movie Touch Kink. It's a very fun film. So hopefully this interview will prompt you to take a look.
So, and at the end of this, we'll come back in and give you some more instructions. We got some links and enjoy. We'll see you at the end. Should be good. So, first of all, Max, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Melissa's husband, Pat, and so you got both of us here.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Melissa. Hello, husband. Husband Pat. Melissa's husband Pat. So your mother named you Melissa's husband, and your family name was Pat.
That's pretty much what
Wow.
it is.
So it was decided. The die was cast early.
Yeah, it was predestined that I was going to be with her. So, but thank you so much for doing this interview with us.
No problem. Love it.
We really appreciate it. We appreciate you sharing your film with us. That was really nice of you.
Thank you.
So, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of we kind of split our questions up kind of into like three little parts. Talk a little bit about you and your history with directing and movie, and then we'd like to talk about the movie itself, and then go into any future projects you may have. Is that okay?
Sure.
So, can you just kind of give us a background on what got you into directing and how long you've been doing that?
When I was about 14, my uncle showed me how to do darkroom work and photography, and the die was cast. I liked the camera being the excuse to be in the room to look. I always felt like I wanted to sort of witness things and watch things for whatever reason. I've always never been comfortable being the center of attention. I more like to document. So photography kind of just seemed really natural for me. And then I got a job with a local newspaper that really the camera became my passport to other people's worlds. You know, I'm like suddenly at some meeting because, Princess Diana's in town with Charles and you have to take pictures for the newspaper. I'm like, wow, I got to go to this? I was like 15 when that happened.
Wow.
Just kind of like, I love how the camera became a passport to me. And I just always went back and forth between video and still photography. For me, it's basically the same thing. It's trying to tell pictures through images. I did that, and then I was lucky enough to get a student exchange to go to Europe, and just met more interesting people, and it just realized the world was this big, beautiful, interesting place, and I just wanted to meet as many people and learn about as many things as I possibly could. So I did everything from production work on TV commercials to location scouting for movies, more what's called below the line stuff, production, the sort of grunt work, which I was happy with. And then a bunch of years ago, somebody wanted me to start directing, and I directed a few things and liked that. So there's the short answer, I guess.
So this is definitely not your first directorial project.
Well, it is in terms of a feature film, in terms of a documentary, it certainly is.
Okay.
I've directed, corporate stuff and advertising stuff and things like that, which is more of a mechanical process where you're basically not really allowed to be too creative. Somebody tells you exactly what things are going to look like, and your job is to sort of stick to the script, kid.
Right.
So that kind of, it was more like a technician for me than having the sort of ability to just kind of do what I want.
Gotta listen to who's ever paying the bills, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was also lucky that I had a post-production company in Vancouver. I was silly enough to set one up, and I got lucky enough that the industry exploded. So I did well, and then I took 18 years off and traveled the world continuously for 18 years.
Wow.
And I was just kind of, to be honest, like the first few months, it was like, honestly, it was getting a little boring. I needed something to do, or I was going to go back, weirdly enough, because it's like, it's nice to travel and see new things, but you still need purpose. You still need something to do. So I ended up working on films and TV and stuff like that, not because I actually needed to, but because I wanted to have purpose and, again, the excuse to be in the room. And then I ended up working in different aspects of production in literally 100 different countries, and found incredibly rewarding to, again, be meeting some guy in Mongolia who's explaining to me about, some Mongolian guy that, left all these secret treasures, or end up in a submarine in Honduras. No, was it Honduras? Yeah, it was Honduras, where a guy had built this submarine, and suddenly I'm finding myself 400 meters underwater in a homemade submarine. Or, landing in Nepal and suddenly finding yourself at, in a helicopter ride to base camp at Everest. It just was fun to kind of like just see where the universe took me.
That is crazy. That sounds exciting.
It's been a really interesting life. I often, because there's so many things happen. So like, just pick a country and let me tell you stories about that country, because there's too many stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Melissa's a little jealous. She loves traveling.
There's envy, yes, just a little bit.
I don't think you want to be in the submarine, but
No, claustrophobia would not allow that, but the adventure would be fun.
I'm glad I didn't think too carefully about it, because I later learned that to officially be a submarine has to go through this heavy duty certification process.
Mm-hmm.
And usually be designed by engineers that know what they're doing and all the rest of it. And this guy literally just kind of read a lot of books, talked to a bunch of retired Navy submarine engineers, and built himself a submarine.
And you went in.
And he couldn't afford to get it certified. But he's been running this submarine, still going. It's called the Ildebel, and he still runs it every day, and it's been running for 20 years. So that's one good seal of approval.
Wow.
But technically, there's no way he could actually be allowed to run it anywhere other than Honduras, because there's these pesky things called laws that kind of
regulations. Who needs them, right?
Regulations and safety, and so sometimes in retrospect I wonder if some of the things I did were good choices, but
But you did it.
But I did it. It was fun, and I've almost died 3 times in my life, and every time it happened, it was completely unexpected, and it wasn't anything that would be like an obvious thing. Well, maybe the first one was kind of obvious, but the second 2 were kind of like out of the blue, and it wasn't anything I was doing. It was just sort of bad luck or good luck, depending how you look at it, because I survived.
I was gonna say, you're here. That's good. So, with this movie, the documentary,
mm-hmm.
What made you decide to do it on this topic? Are you in the lifestyle? Is that something that drove this decision, or was it just something that you're like, you know what, 50 Shades is out, it seems to be picking up popularity, let's dig into it?
I'd always felt like a little different than most people. I always just kind of did what I wanted to do and figured it out. I never was really influenced very much by other people. And I could never figure out why everyone didn't live their life that way. I would just, okay, I'm going to build a business, I'll build a business. I fail, I succeed, I want to go there, I go there, I just do it. And I always found people just kind of like, oh, can we follow you? I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, I'm going to Cambodia. Okay, we're coming with you. And I didn't really understand what that was. But I'd always, been more dominant kind of person, but, grew up in the time of still, let's talk about it, let's be open about what we're into, and we could still do all those things that maybe people don't talk about anymore, but I think that I've always thought they're cool if people consent. And then I read a book called SM 101, and I think the opening couple of pages was, there's this thing called dominance and submission. There's some people that are just sort of naturally more dominant by nature, and there's people that are naturally more like want to follow by nature. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. And that was like, so I think I was always into the DS thing. I was always into consent. I was always into doing whatever, really, with consent. I didn't call it kinky or call it, BDSM or anything else. because I didn't know what that was till I was like 35 or so. And then I just enjoy that process. And somebody told somebody that I knew about this stuff, and this company that wanted to roll out a dating app for kinky people approached me and said, "Hey, would you help us roll this out to the kink community? We hear you're kinky." I'm like, "Okay, sure. Tell me more about it." It was a company that I don't think they knew anything about kink, but I knew enough more than them that I was the expert, I guess. I investigated the app, and between you, me, and the lamppost, well, I guess the whole world now, I didn't think it was that great. And I told them that honestly, I don't think your app is very good. It could be if you get out there and you want to listen to people and you want to do the right thing and work on it. And I also said, look, and I'm not particularly interested in just being a shill and going, hey, go to this app, go to this app. I've always believed that everyone's motivated by one of three things, or a combination thereof. Some people are purely motivated by money. Some people are motivated by social conscience, some idea that they want to do something for the world, or be of service to the world. There's a connection. This matters. And then some people are just pure ego. And we're all probably combinations of. And I said to them, look, sure, the fact you're sponsoring events is going to get one kind of person. But if we do a documentary or something and we're really trying to talk to these people, you're also going to get the people that just want the message out. They don't really care about the money. They just want people to understand who they are and speak. So, the first event, I made a list of events, all the events everybody knows about, I guess. And the first one that I happened to go to was DomCon. And I met all these dominatrixes, and frankly, I thought that was a bit of a caricature. I'd never really known many. For me, that was, frankly, the kind of thing is, there's this thing about hooker with a whip kind of thing, and I probably had that cliche myself to some extent until I started meeting these people. And just because they were kind of like the first people I met. And then I started realizing, the lifestyle was more male dom, female submissive. That's a tougher sell right now. Kinky already is a tough sell to the world. If I start doing kinky and, male dominant females, which is a bigger part of the world than the dominatrix, it was probably going to be an impossible sell. So I decided intentionally to focus on the femdom aspect of it initially. And it was interesting to me, and it's where I started. So, I took the app, took me to these events, and I promoted the app, and I filmed my documentary, and that's how it, just started like that organically.
So you were doing them simultaneously, filming the app?
Yeah, no, that was the pitch. I said to them, look, I don't want to just be a sales guy, and I don't think it'll work anyway. If you want to throw in a few extra bucks, we'll do this documentary at the same time, and you'll get the people that want to do social or care about what this is and helping people understand what it is. That's the ego and the being of service kind of aspect. And of course, there's money too, a sponsor event, so you kind of get everybody that way. Right. So I pitched that, and to my surprise, they actually went for it. So I was able to just be honest with people, say, hey, I'm here. Please download this app. They're my sponsor, and hey, can I interview some of you? And that was how it started. And it was it really worked out well. I got 1.6 million people to try their app.
Wow.
So it's worked out well for them.
It was, well, the whole project, I think, was like $500,000. But so that's like a 33-cent customer acquisition cost, which I understand is, incredibly good. So they got more than their money's worth. But unfortunately they didn't. They started taking my advice towards the end, but it was too late, and they just weren't holding any of these people. They'd sign in, they'd download, the app would be buggy, or they wouldn't fix certain things, or they didn't understand certain things, and it just didn't survive. But I'm grateful very much for their time and their effort, and I think their heart was in the right place. I think that, like a lot of people, they just didn't really understand the whole thing. And I didn't either. Now, I understand the whole kink thing better than I ever did before. I'm more probably from your world, where it's more male dom, female submissive, more lifestyle. Now I understand the femdom side better. Now I understand the fetishist side better. I went to gay events, which was fascinating to me, because I always had the village people thing going. And and it really surprised me how much respect, like, these guys were, they do look that way to some extent, but they're really incredibly like strong. I don't know. I don't know why it came as a surprise to me, but just how these guys, most of them had literally served. So they'd literally been in the military. They'd actually not just, saluted the flag or anything. They risked their lives to protect that freedom. And I don't know why that wasn't so obvious to me before. But I just developed a huge respect for these guys because if anybody's actually, risked anything to have that lifestyle on average, they probably risk more than most.
Right, right, agreed.
That's just interesting. Every time I go into a new world or a new community, even if it was a little bit kind of like, oh, I don't know, are they going to like me or what? This is kind of what's going to happen. It always was an amazing experience to try and get to the heart of, what it was.
So, as you went into these communities, how difficult was it to get people to appear on film? I mean, when you go and you say, "Hey, I'm here shooting a documentary, you want to be on?" How many of them actually said, "Oh yeah, let's do it," and how many of them are like, I'm kind of trying to keep my private life private, or maybe they didn't even believe you were a filmmaker. I mean, was that a difficult thing?
Surprisingly not. I would say no more than 1% of people said no. And of the 150 I did interview, only two requested to do it in with anonymity. I think it's people are ready. Maybe it's also, a lot of them were the dominatrixes that were maybe a little bit more out there already. So maybe that if I had done it pure lifestyle, maybe I would have got more feedback or more pushback. But no, I actually found it surprisingly, people really, really sort of surprisingly open, surprisingly frank, surprisingly unvarnished. I anticipated that there would be a lot of the in the dark, I'm doing this, but it turned out quite the opposite. And again, maybe that's because a lot of the subjects, that I ended up using were, femdom, pro-doms that, want the advertising, I guess. Maybe if it was people that are more lifestyle that, your day job is working at the principal for the high school, nobody needs to know what you do in your private time. You're not ashamed of it, but it just, the world is not quite ready for the principal of Springfield High to be in leather community yet,
Yeah.
They should be, and I think they will. I think the it's analogous with the gay community. It was only 50 years ago that it stopped becoming a mental illness to be gay. It's only been 10 years that it stopped to be a mental illness to be kinky. Yep. So we're really at the beginning of that process. I don't doubt, and nobody's going to lose a job over being gay, but I think people could have problems of being in the lifestyle right now. But I think in 20 years, I think that'll be protected just as well. As long as you're a good person, as long as you're not, bad people. There's more bad people that are not kinky in my mind as a percentage of people, because it's mainly being bad is about doing things without consent.
Right. Well,
it's not about spanking. And tie people up all day long with their consent. Do it without their consent, then that's a bad.
That's a problem.
That's kidnapping. Yeah. Well, and it's good that you bring this up, because we shared a story on one of our earlier podcasts where we were at Kinky College, which is an event in our area, and we were listening to this gentleman tell his story, and he works for the school district. He's a school bus driver, and he would lose his job if they found out that he was even at that event. It has nothing to do with his lifestyle or what his choices are. Just if he was at that event, he would lose his job automatically, because of course if you're kinky and doing this stuff, then of course you're a child molester and rapist.
Same stuff they said about gay people 40 years 50 years ago.
So yeah, it's really good that we're finally starting to get the education out there, and I think after watching your film, I think it's doing a great job of presenting that aspect of it, So
well, I didn't start this way, but now I think that we can actually say that we should have a superiority complex because the way that we interact with each other and the way we interact as humans with, discussions and informed consent and being sure we're on the same page and then doing whatever we do, even if it's a little out there, then taking care afterwards. Well, how was that? Should we do that again? That's not just a model for kink or human. That's a model for business. It's a model for life. It's a model for everything, because where the world sort of messes up sometimes is people thinking there's one true way. They don't take the time to talk to other people and try, and at least you don't have to agree with people. You can do the old your thing is not my thing, but you still should take the time to try and understand them and not just apply sort of universal, some sort of rules that you decide are right against everybody. You can believe what you want to believe and who you are, but it's a discussion, it's a process. And I think there's a lot we could use that in diplomatic stuff. We could use that in business stuff. We can use that in solving geopolitical crises. I mean, it really is a beautiful process. And I think the other part of it that's beautiful is that there's sort of this recognition that's part of kink in my mind, that everybody is so different. That the reason I'm asking questions and we're talking is I don't know you. Maybe you look like a guy, but maybe you think of yourself as a woman. I'm not going to assume. And maybe there's sort of beautiful ideas from that. We celebrate the diversity. We appreciate the diversity. We may not be into the same things as someone else, but generally, you don't shut other people down. And I think that openness will create ideas, and those ideas will be the ideas that could solve a lot of the problems the world needs to solve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the communication and the whole relational aspect of life has just gone so far where it's my way or the highway. I'm not talking to you to share ideas. I'm talking to you to force you to believe my ideas, or I'm talking to convince you that my way is the right way. And in the lifestyle, that's just not how it is. And so.
No. And that's funny though, that's actually a fairly recent thing. Because the original concept of democracy was that, okay, I'm going to share my idea, you share your idea, and then someone gets to decide which was the best idea. It wasn't that, oh, you're this, you're that. And somewhere along the line, it stopped becoming about ideas.
Yep.
And just became about making the other person look bad. Yeah. And that's where we are now, and that's why they don't, the powers that be don't want us would want us to have more shame and more worry or more things. So they have stuff to throw against us, and
it helps to control, when you.
It helps to control the masses if you say, well, you don't do that. Oh, only bad people are like that, as opposed to that's just a different approach. Right. How politics right now seems to be less about the marketplace of beautiful ideas. It's more about let's make the other guy look worse.
I mean, you can see it in all their campaigns. It's all just smear campaigns now.
It's demagoguery. It's just, everybody's trying to, it's unfortunate. And I think, that it's funny if you look at countries that are more sort of open and more kind of where there is more democratization of ideas, they tend not to do as well militarily. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe there's a reason they want to keep us repressed and messed up, because, somehow nipples will kill us, but everyone should have a gun.
Yeah. I think nipples would make many more people much happier.
Yeah. That's kind of more nipples.
But I think
more nipples.
Maybe I often wonder if there isn't actually a concerted effort to. I mean, it's harder and harder to control the masses. Right. So the best technique for controlling people is to have them feel shame about. There's reasons we should feel shame, but they're not. Most of the reasons people feel shame aren't reasons. Walking around naked is not a reason you should feel shamed. Right. Doing something bad to someone else. That's something. But other, there's not. Believing in what you believe. I mean, it's just funny, but they want to make you feel bad for supporting transgender people or not supporting transgender. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's just they just want to. You have to choice. Like, I don't really know enough of them yet. Know enough people, and seems okay. I don't understand what the big deal is. But why are they devils? Are they coming to take my land? What's going on?
Get more guns.
Need more guns.
Yeah.
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 I know, because they have nipples. That's probably why.
That's the
That's what it is.
problem.
It's the
They
nipples.
should have more nipples, because if they become a woman, those are bad nipples, because you're allowed. If they're biologically men, they're okay. Nipples are okay. But if they're biologically female, the nipples are dangerous. So
Yeah,
maybe they're just afraid of more nipples. That could be.
that's what it
Mm.
is.
I could see that because, boobs rule the world. You get
Mhm.
a man upset, you flash a tit, everything's good.
That tends to be how it is in
Mhm.
our relationship,
mean-
anyway.
Mhm.
So, while you were making this documentary, was there anything that really kind of jumped out and surprised you? That, I mean, I know you were saying earlier that you're surprised when you went like to the gay communities and stuff like that, but was there anything with like the dominatrix or anything that was just like mind blowing that
Um, I don't know, mind blowing. It was interesting. Like, again, one of the things I like about kinky people is they will interact differently with different people. So I'd be standing having a conversation with a dominatrix, and they would start like this, like we're two regular people equal. And maybe someone else that she interacted with, they would have a previous relationship, and maybe he was submissive or whatever. So she'd be talking like this to thing, and then go, "You're worth this little bitch shit," and kick him in the balls, and like give the meanest look and feel, and then back to, "So what are we gonna have for breakfast today?" Just kind of like this. It was almost like speaking two languages. She had, nobody. I really appreciated the fact that most people in the kink community will start as equals, and then, because everything is consensual, it doesn't matter whether you're dominant or submissive. You're not my dominant or my submissive, and that has to be negotiated too, unless you ask for it, and then it's still the other person decides whether they want to give it to you or not. But I like the fact that, for the most part, people were super, super respectful of that kind of thing. And I appreciated that. I was surprised, frankly, and maybe it's just because a lot of younger people getting into it haven't gone through the same, but it's usually, if anyone ever did the "I'm introducing myself as Master Bob and you will address me as such," it's usually someone who's like 18, been in the lifestyle for about 2 weeks now, and really, like, to me, there was actually nothing less dominant than someone trying to dominate you, because that just shows that you clearly don't know where you are. You don't get it at all. I don't know if it was a surprise, but yeah, I think the one that stuck with me the most is, and it's obviously because I consider myself dominant, although I'm getting more switchy now just because I'm getting more experimental, I suppose. But all the dominatrixes were really lovely people, almost without exception. Like, they're really like sweet, surprisingly like sweet, normal, regular people that, in a second it could be like, "Ooh,
yeah.
wow." It's like her twin sister just said, so it was just but that was obviously in a consensual situation. It was surprising. I thought there'd be some that were a little bit, but the ones everyone who had done it for a while seemed to be really just regular people, unless you were, playing or in a scene. And I don't know if it was a surprise. I just thought maybe the dominatrix would be like that more often, but
Just a little more dominatrix than what they were.
Something you can tell. I mean, you could tell, honestly, most of the time you meet someone just by their body language. If they're closed body language, they're typically a little more submissive. If the body language, I mean, you guys are a perfect example. Actually, you can tell you're more open body language. You're not trying to present as a dominant or anything, but you're just sort of naturally presenting a certain way. And you can tell most of that just by body language anyway. It's just a feeling you have for people,
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're asking people if they wanted to be on camera for this and doing the interviews, were you finding more of the DOMs that would say yes? Were you asking more DOMs than subs, or was there kind of an equal number, or were their DOMs saying no, this one's not going to be on camera? I mean, how much of that did you experience?
Honestly, I don't think I had any. I mean, I had so many more people than I could film, because initially I had people helping me, and they were like talking to people and arranging interviews, and I was just running them like a factory in the beginning. So maybe they got more no's than I realized, but I don't think there was very many. I had a lot of submissive guys that were talking. I ended up using Robin just because I saw him more and I loved the way he spoke. And he's super smart. He comes off as kind of like a, relaxed guy, but he's, an engineer with like super smart mind. And I just end up let him speak for all the guys, I guess, was for him and Cupcake, I guess. But there were certainly others. There's a lot of others, but you start off with like 150 people, and then you come next time you see how many you've got something happens to, and then to try and make any kind of story, you want something to happen. It can't be, hey, I'm a dom, I'm still a dom. Yep. 4 months later, still a dom. Yep. Oh, yep. Over. Yep. I'm still a dom. I wanted the ones where, someone got kicked out of their house and somebody, thought this was a little weird, or, maybe, needed something with some sort of basic arc. So that was more important than anything else. Start with a bunch of people and then just
whittled it down by
whittled it down based upon what happened. I mean, I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know. I mean, honestly, it's funny. Somebody thought that I was like, oh, yes, I honestly, I filmed it in real time. I didn't know where it was going to go. I thought maybe Emily, the girl that decided to check this out, would go, yeah, they're all batshit crazy. And I wasn't going to cut it if she did.
right.
I wanted to genuinely see what her experience was, because I felt like I was getting a little bit too much like, yeah, everyone should do this. There's some beautiful truth here. So
how long did it actually take once you
a year.
actually a year? So you followed all these people for a year?
Not all. No, I couldn't afford to do that. I had a number of events that I was going to. And that's one reason. A lot of them were femdom events. So I would go to those events where a lot of people would be. And again, that was why I ended up having more of the femdom thing. So I started DomCon, and I started London actually, and then went to DomCon, and then I can't remember what the next one was, Montreal Fetish Weekend maybe, and then it ended basically at DomCon. So it was just checking in at those people, at those opportunities, and then in between I had the opportunity to go to a big event in Costa Rica where was a bunch of people, so I was able to catch up with people there too. So I can't say it was all planned. I mean, I basically just started with a bunch of people, did the best I could with what I had at the events that I was able to go to. If I'm able to do one about the lifestyle, I would do much the same approach, where I would start at whatever the biggest lifestyle event is, then find out what the next top 10 ones are, and go to those events and see who I bumped into and what happened. And if something really interesting happened, like with the lady getting kicked out of her house, then I'd have to make a special trip to fly to London just for that. But you didn't want to do that too often because it's expensive.
Yeah. That was very heartbreaking. Her
yeah.
story.
Yeah.
It was very heartbreaking.
That boggled my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obvious, I suppose. She was very, her heart was certainly in the right place, but, she was a little too open. There were actually, now that I think about it, there were quite a few super famous doms that said no chance, not going to be in it, because they'd been down this rodeo before, and it almost never, them sticking up their head almost never turns out well.
Yeah.
So now that I think about it, there's a few that really did say no. Actually, now that I think about it, I hadn't thought about that for a while, but yeah, there is a few of the super famous ones that said there's nothing. There's I mean, one of the things people. There's no upside. I mean, you probably know, but one of the biggest places for these people is Washington, D.C. has more per capita than anywhere else. There's none of the ones from Washington would want to talk to me, because that pretty much will kill your business.
Yep.
It's like, do you think that whoever senator wants to see his dom on TV? Don't think so.
Right.
Yeah. So that was, I was surprised. Nobody in Washington, but yeah, I guess there was a lot of people said, but yeah. So from that first meeting, the subjects were more or less cast, I guess.
So you mentioned the young lady who went through the classes to see if she wanted to, take that home. How did you find her? I wouldn't think she would be at like one of the conventions at all. So how would you?
No. As I mentioned before, I've been very fortunate in my life to travel a lot. And I used to go to India for Christmas every year, just to try and swim in the ocean and whatever. And I'd actually met her in India and just liked her. We had dinner a couple of times, and I immediately recognized, we were just going to be friends because, she was a very dominant person naturally. She wouldn't have known what that was. She didn't really understand it. She's not an unattractive woman, but she couldn't understand why 90% of guys found her bitchy,
Right.
you know. She never really understood it. And also pretty much all her real successful boyfriends were military, heavy duty guys, like special, but military nonetheless. And I'm going, ding, ding. Yeah, I know what's going on here. So I knew that she was naturally dominant, but had no idea. So I kind of thought she'd figure it out, and she did.
So you kind of invited her in for this actual part of the
I
film?
literally I called her up and said, "Hey, it's me. Remember we met in India?" And I mean, she is camera friendly. She's smart. She's articulate. Said, "Hey, can I give you a free trip to LA and let you learn from dominatrixes how to do this stuff and whatever?" And she's like, and I knew as a traveler, it's like, you never say no. If somebody says, "Oh, we're going to go to a temple on a mountain," well, I don't know, where they eat bugs in the temple on the mountain. Well, oh hell, let's go. Let's see what happens. You can't say no as a traveler because that might be like, those were the best tasting bugs I ever had. You just have to take those. So I kind of knew that I guessed that she would, and yeah, and she did, and it was beautiful because I honestly wasn't sure she'd see it the same way and sort of go through it and have the same experiences, but it really worked out beautifully because it really was my kind of like checking my homework kind of thing. Am I the only one seeing this because I've been around this, or if a vanilla, because she to me was always the audience. She's my audience, 30 something, 40 something year old woman who's open-minded but doesn't know this world. They maybe read 50 Shades of Grey, but that's all they know. So that's my audience. And if I couldn't convince her, who I was pretty sure was dominant, then I think I would have really had a problem because she was always my audience. So that was why I was sort of softer, put her through it. And she was also able to articulate the stuff that still blows me away. Like, there's a point in the film where she's talking about, like, I don't know what's going to happen if they're going to be naked. Do I have to do things with them? Like, not understanding you can do what you want and not what you want. Like that still surprised me how people like don't understand that going to a kink party does not put you in any obligation to be anybody's play toy or to play with anybody. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Right.
But people somehow think, oh, if I'm in that milieu, somehow I'm giving consent to strangers to do strange things. It's amazing to me. But I think that is still the core misconception.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, in all honesty, before I got into the lifestyle, I had the same misconceptions. You only know what the media and all that presents to you. And they have not done a very good job so far in really, I mean, 50 Shades brought it to the mainstream, but in such a poor way, in my opinion anyway. I know there's people that say, oh, no, that was a great movie, but I watched it and I'm like, yeah, that's more abuse than it was consent, But
it wasn't kinky. It was like a woman trying to rescue a fucked up dude.
Really?
Okay,
Exactly.
I'll live in your world to try and rescue you from yourself.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's pretty insulting.
Yeah.
But it's like that's like trying to convert a gay person to straight or a straight person to gay. It's like, oh, you're really gay. I'm gonna just teach you about that and make you this, or vice versa. You are what you are. Yeah,
Exactly.
Don't try and change me.
Yeah. So I understand the misconceptions.
Yeah.
I think there are some, like I said, you learned kind of earlier on. You started exploring earlier on. For me, it was much, much later in life, and I think the later in life it is, the more misconceptions that are there. You've had so much time of your life to be programmed by everything else that now this comes along and you're like, well, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And you see it and you're like, well, there's no way, especially when you see a power exchange relationship where, like you said, you'd be talking to the dominatrix and she'd turn around and kick them and call them names, and you're like, well, that's just kind of jacked up. But you don't realize, no, that's exactly what they want. Mm-hmm. It is fully consensual. It's good for them to do that. From the outside world, it looks jacked up. you know. So I get it.
And we're all, no matter how enlightened or educated we all are, we're all products of our environment. We're all, no matter what, the most open-minded people still will have their lines,
Right.
you know, because, well, but that's too far. And it, you know,
And for them,
that's,
it may
you
be.
can't help
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm?
And for them, it may be too far, you know,
And that's fine.
and that's
And there's
fine.
certain things that I feel the same way about, but you know, you learn more and you're like, okay, I guess that's, you know, if we believe that we all have agency and we can choose to believe and choose to live as we want to live,
Right.
then it's not for us to decide, you know,
Exactly.
about other people.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, safe, sane, and consensual. If, if,
Hmm.
if they're doing it, hey, more power to
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
So, um, so after talking about the film, you said you interviewed a lot more people. Are you planning on doing anything with that footage, or do you think that's just kind of not really worth putting together? Or you got other projects that you wanting to get done now? Other areas you're wanting to explore?
Yeah. Well, the truth is I have about 10 different projects that I have under development.
Okay.
But it's expensive to do this sort of thing. So frankly, I will sort of go with whatever I find the funding on first, or what the path that reveals the first.
Okay.
You know, I've ended up doing documentaries or not pieces from everything from styrofoam cups to super yachts to hanging out with the Dalai Lama, and it's all been interesting. Even like how styrofoam cups were made was fascinating actually to be able to watch it. So I'm very open-minded to learn new things. So it's very easy for me to zig or zag. So you know, if I get funding to do something else like this, I'll do something else like this. If in the in between I am going through my other material and starting to see what I can use for something else, because in a perfect world, what I'd love to do is a 10-part series, because I recognize that I shed a little light on one tiny little aspect of the community.
Right.
And there's so much more to it. It's like I visited France, and this is what humans live like. You know, I'd like to sort of visit, you know, England and the United States and Mexico too, you know, and find out, um, you know, do a 10-part series and cover different aspects. This is what leather is. This is what lifestyle is. This is what pet play is. This is what latex is. This is what, you know, do it instead of traveling do it like a travel show, but instead of traveling to countries, we travel to communities and try and understand a little bit more about that. And I would love to do that, but you know, if you happen to have a spare $3 or $4 million lying around, let me
Just
know
throw it
and
your way.
we can talk. Yeah, to do that show would be at least $3 million, and I don't have $3 million.
No.
I probably
Yet.
never will have to.
Yeah.
Probably
Yet.
never have $3 million, but you know, maybe I'll find somebody to sponsor it.
Well, so speaking of that, I mean, how does with this film already done and completed? And by the way, the production on this I thought was amazing. It was beautifully shot. Um, yeah, I enjoyed watching this immensely. How now, since that the people who sponsored you with the app, with them being under, do you own this film now?
Oh yeah, I own it. I own it. Yeah.
So how do you get this film out there to start making money off of this film? What is it going to take to
Um,
do that now?
Oh, I've already that started a few months ago. That's actually what got me onto LinkedIn. Actually, was you find yourself an agent, you know. So I went onto LinkedIn and made a list of the world's 100 agents that dealt with this kind of stuff and chased them down. And I got 17 of them to make me offers.
Wow.
And one made me an offer that involved giving me some money up front, which was useful because I needed to spend it on doing some sound stuff. Should have used it to whatever. But so yeah, it's already out there. It's been on the TV market for a couple months now. We already have people offering money for different things. It's not going to make the money that it costs to make because that just doesn't happen anymore with the current market. So it would, but luckily, out of my own pocket, it didn't cost that much. So I'll make something from it, sure, but the truth is, the money is when somebody like get lucky and say a Netflix sees it, and maybe they decide to buy it, maybe they decide not to buy it, but maybe they like the idea and they like the production value, and they hire me to do
To
a
do the
series.
10-part series, yeah.
Exactly. Then I get paid by them. I'll have residuals from that. But then there's somebody else's job to, get me to A and B and do the rest of it and do that. That's usually where the money comes, is when you're famous enough or well known enough that they hire you to do something.
Gotcha.
Almost nobody, there are notable exceptions, but almost nobody ever makes money doing a film that they paid for themselves or put together themselves. It just, because you go film festivals, and especially now, because uh, the market is really fractured. I mean, it was the old days. It was TV and film, and then we added the Netflixes of the world. But now there's there's about three other things now. In fact, the most common thing that seems to be growing the most is what they call fast channels, which is free ad-supported television. And basically, what it is TV on your computer now, the same as we had TV on the TV before. They've really come full circle. So now anybody can, watch the content. It stops every 15 minutes and there's an ad. So, I mean, it's like this is the new innovation. We've gone full circle.
Let's go right back to
But
what we had,
right
just a
now,
different delivery system.
nobody's really sure which model's going to prevail. Some people will pay not to have ads. Some people will expect it to be free. Some people. So because the market is so fractured right now, nobody's really writing any big checks for anything other than something that's gone through the boardroom and decided, which is why something like I read recently that of the films being made, 80% of the films are based on existing intellectual property. In other words, it's already a Marvel, it's already a book people know, it's already a comics people know, or superhero people know. It's something people already have heard about. Nobody's just doing stories that no one's ever heard of, because that's really hard to get through. So,
Yeah, a lot of
long story short, next project will be pretty much what I get paid to do, and I hope it'll be something about kink and travel.
That would be fun.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting this in front of like a Netflix, something that big? I mean, is that your agent just
That's the
keeps
agent's job,
pushing?
yeah.
Okay. 'Cause
Yeah, it's Netflix is hard, and HBO, and the really big ones are hard because obviously everybody wants to get in front of those gatekeepers, so those gatekeepers tend to be a little harder to get to. But some of the smaller, even big production companies like Paramount and CBS, and you can get to those people. They'll give you a quick yes or no, but you can usually get a decision. Yeah, it's really just finding them, and the agent theoretically should have connections, or connections that have connections. And in my case, I think it is in front of Netflix right now, and it's a connection of my agent, not even my agent, that's taking it there. So,
Nice.
but they take a year to make a decision in between, the time Sky TV in Germany buys it for their Sky network, and then Netflix isn't interested because it's already been shown in Europe. So, I mean, just take what what happens happens. Again, that's why when it's pre-bought, if they decide you're going to make a series like this, they've also already figured out when they're going to be selling it, when it'll be broadcast. So it's going to be shown in 2026. So you have till September 2025 to finish it. Here's what we have to do, because it will be shown on October 5th, 2026. They have all that set up way in advance, so they can have them, and they'll probably have it mixed with other TV shows that they feel will be appropriate balance, blah, blah, blah.
So when did you actually finish this one? Because I noticed that there's a lot of talk about the pandemic, and some other things going on. Well, that was like 2019, 2020 and all that. So when was this film actually shot and kind of wrapped up?
It was shot just before the pandemic and finished just after. I actually finished it this year on January 14th.
Oh, so
Oh,
you
wow.
just finished it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long process.
Well, that was. Remember I tell you about almost dying? I lost. There's a lot of weird shit happened. The woman that I was working with at the beginning of January took her own life,
I remember that.
and I didn't know what to do, so I just put it on hold and did other things for a while. And one day I decided, well, I don't know how to decide. I think I'm just going to try and get a hold of her parents and talk to them about the situation because I was thinking I could pick it up again. I'll just cut her out of it maybe or figure it out. But she always felt like the spiritual guide behind it, if that makes any sense.
Was this the one in
And
the film at the end where you?
yeah,
Dedicated,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah. She was the woman that started. She's the first woman you hear from. She was actually the first dominatrix I ever met. That's actually, I forgot that part of the story. I had met her in Budapest and she admitted she was a dominatrix. I'm like, okay, that's interesting what that's like. And we actually literally just talked all night about her lives. Fascinating me. She seemed like such a nice person for being a dominatrix. It was all the cliches, and she was just really open about it and really kind of the inspiration behind it. So, and she was actually one of the reasons why perhaps I got such a warm welcome is she kind of said, hey, everybody, I'm vouching. You know what it's like with the kink community,
Yeah.
Yep.
I suppose. I forget this little bit, actually. I should remember. It's like she vouched for me, basically. She told everybody he's cool, and that's why I probably got farther faster. I suppose if I had walked in, maybe it would have been more challenging, but she was she vouched for me, and that was a big part of why the film got done. But she took her own life, so I took some time, and then I got a hold of her parents, and her parents basically said that as long as people understood it wasn't her interest in BDSM that killed her. If anything, that might have actually kept her alive a little longer because she was able to control her life a little bit more than most people can. And I was surprised and pleased that they didn't have any issue with it, so I started in earnest. But unfortunately, then I had a major stroke and ended up basically 1% chance of survival. I was gonzo for about a week in coma, and it took me about 6 months to sort of recover my faculties. So yeah, I kind of lost a year and a half there, and a year and a half with COVID. So
Wow.
once COVID was done, I started got back into editing. So yeah, there was a kind of a weird backstory there too.
Well, we're glad you're with us.
Me too.
Yeah, and we're definitely looking forward to more projects, especially like this.
I would really love to do something about the lifestyle. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the questions I have.
Yeah, I think
Did you have anything you've been quite quiet over there, so I want to make sure that
that's kind of normal.
yeah, get out what you want to get out because I know.
I'm the one that does all the scheduling.
Well, you're the one who kind of put this whole thing in motion, so thank you too.
Well, I don't know. I saw the post in LinkedIn and I was like, I want to know more. And so we did.
Well, one more thing. So you have the petition drive going.
Oh, yes.
How is that going? Are you getting signatures? We're gonna put links to all of this with the podcast and that, and we're gonna try to drive as much as we can to your website and get all this going. So, but how is that coming?
Every time I have an opportunity like this, I usually push it a little bit. I don't know how many signatures there are now. It's probably not a lot. I think a couple hundred. But it's one of those things just to make people think about it differently and open up discussion. A lot of people will say, but there has been great films. I'm like, okay, name one. And then people will often say, like The Secretary. The Secretary has the most classic of classics. She did this because she was a abused person, and she was crazy, so she was only doing this because I loved every part about the film except for that. Right. They had to go to the cliche that okay, she's only doing this because of her, so even the best film so far isn't perfect. So I just want to bring people like the people in the kink scene that will like certain films, but everybody likes what they like and they prioritize what they like. And some people it's more about gender identity. Some people it's more about DS. Some people it's more about a specific activity. But they kind of forget that there are other people that have other concerns that, maybe they feel they're unfairly represented because of whatever. And so far I've not seen, and I can't think of a film that covers all bases. And maybe it's because you can't, if you tell one story, you can't. Because your characters are what your characters are. That's why I like the idea in my film to try and at least show you different people that had different results, okay? They have different backgrounds. Some like it, some didn't, some this, some that. You know, somehow that felt closer to the truth to me
Mm-hmm.
than to be focused on any one person,
Right.
Yeah, I
And
which
agree.
movies have.
I that's one of the things I really liked about your film is it showed, you know, not, I ain't gonna say a lot of aspects, but within the dominatrix, the professional dominatrix that you're showing, you know, you did show even a couple shots of that one couple sitting at home, you know, watching TV and eating popcorn. You know, hey, look, we're normal
Mhm.
people. You know, this is
Mhm.
what we do. It's not a
Mhm.
constant, you know, dom con in our lives.
It
So
Yeah.
normalized it.
yeah,
Yeah.
And it
so
is normal. I mean, it is generally. And I hope that we, you know, again, I always reference the gay community just because I think they've been down this road before us. And a lot of what really helped. I mean, my grandmother was like, didn't know what it was until she was shocked to find out that Liberace was gay. And after that, she had no problem with, oh, he seems like a nice guy. I like his music. I guess it's okay. And that was it.
right, yeah,
Moment where she kind of knew someone she liked, even if it was a famous person that was like that, that was over. That was the end of it. But up until that point, she'd never met anybody like, or I'm sure she had, but
just didn't know
she
it.
just didn't have that clear connection before. So I love the idea of like, you know, that's what kinky people, you know, you probably can pass for a vanilla person if you really want to. It's so silly. People think they literally look different or something, you know?
Right,
It's like,
yeah,
it's just, but you know, it's what people think. So I just wanted to show people, to start that thing, letting people just realize that we're doctors and lawyers and engineers. We're just normal people
yeah,
doing normal jobs, and what we do, other things that we like, or whether it's part of, can be our identity. It could be just something we do for fun. For some people, it's 24/7. For some people, it's for 24 minutes.
right,
You know, it's different for different people, but you know, that's what they do, and that's how they want to be, or what gives them joy or gives them pleasure, and it doesn't preclude them from being good people. If anything, I actually think the opposite. The people who lead lives that are closer to what feels right to them in every possible aspect will be happier people, will be better people, and will probably be people that contribute to the whole more than those that don't,
right.
you know?
I
Yep,
agree.
I agree.
Hmm.
Well, I got, like I said, I got nothing else. Are you good?
I'm good. Do you have questions for us?
I am curious about a couple of things. If I don't know if I feel like I should be rolling cameras on you guys now.
Oh,
We're
I
open.
find that the I know it's like the Christian kinky thing, the kinky podcast, right? Is that
Hmm.
yes, the
Yep.
Kinky
I find
Christian.
that really fascinating, and I believe, I respect people of faith, and I'm grew up Christian, and I want to believe more, so I'm always fascinated when I to explore that. So like, how does your faith, your Christian faith, intersect with your BDSM lifestyle?
Um, that was something. So, just a quick little history. Melissa is the one who kind of brought us into this lifestyle. It wasn't my desire to do it as hers, and so being a
It's
Christian,
always the innocent ones that cause the
it
trouble.
is, isn't it?
Busted.
And like I said, you look at her and you think she's so nice and sweet, and
I'm not.
Nah.
yeah. So, um, when she brought it to me and said, "This is what I want," my first thing is always to run it through the filter of God's word. And
Mm-hmm.
as I did that, there is nothing in the Bible at all that says you can't do this. Nothing.
Of course not.
In fact, it's more the opposite. When you really start to read the Bible and what God wants from us with sex, as long as it's within His parameters, you know, He wants you to just have a good time. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like you said, people who are more open and honest with themselves and what they want, and are doing that, are generally happier. So yeah, once I really started, it took me a little bit. I researched and I dug into it, but yeah, there's, surprisingly, I found nothing that said
No.
don't do it. So I'm like, what the heck, man?
Yeah.
If this is what you want, let's
Game
do
on.
it. So and
Well, I think like I went to I'm Protestant, but I went to a Catholic university, and I'm pretty sure the Catholics would have some issues.
But that's religion.
that's religion, not faith.
But anyway,
You know?
Protestant, I agree. It's like,
Yeah, it. A lot of the issues I believe that any Christian, any religion has with it are man-made. When you get down to Christianity and what it is,
your relationship with your,
it's a faith. It's
Yeah.
not a religion. It's a faith, and it's
yeah,
your
yeah,
relationship with God.
yeah,
And God does not say anything at all about you can't have kinky sex.
yeah, yeah,
Nothing. There's nothing that
yeah.
even like is. In fact, when you read like the Song of Solomon, that's very explicit. He's talking about
Yeah,
grabbing
yeah,
tits, and I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's so it's more of a man-made construct to turn
Yeah.
everything against it. And once I realized that, yeah, and I think we're very open to other people in what they do. Like you said, it doesn't have to be your kink. You know,
hmm
but
hmm
if it's theirs, hey,
Let's talk about
hmm
it.
yeah, go
Yeah,
for it, man.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's that should be the most Christian of concepts.
You would think
To
so.
listen to thy neighbor, and
Yeah,
walk in his shoes,
yeah.
and
Love thy
yeah,
neighbor.
exactly.
To be honest with you, Max, we're finding it. Uh, we just came back from Kinky College a few weeks ago, and we were very shocked that they are more anti-Christian than what us Christian. Well, I say us Christian, but us as Christians were anti-kink. It
hmm
was I was really surprised. That was our first experience with people in the community being exclusive of anything.
hmm
You know, so I just think that's kind of why we started the podcast, is to see if let's bring the kink community and the Christian community together,
hmm
and say, hey, we're all people.
We're all
Let
humans.
we're all humans,
Exactly.
man. What's good for you may not be good for me, and vice versa. But that does not mean I hate you. I don't
hmm
judge you, and I
hmm
just ask the same in return.
Yeah,
And
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's important to listen to people's ideas and to try and hear it, because maybe you don't believe it all. Maybe you only start with 25%, and you go, I actually think I believe a little bit more. And then maybe you end up, but to just shut yourself down to beautiful ideas, to what could very well be the truth, is sort of crazy, really. I mean, you might as well at least be open to the possibility.
Exactly.
and I think also from our standpoint, being Christians and being kinky, there's a lot of that shame that we bring with us from our upbringing, and that was a hard struggle for us. And we're hoping that some of the messages that we are sending out there will allow someone to feel less shameful about where they are, and be open to have conversations with people that are in their circle, to say, this is who I am. Can we have a dialogue about this?
Mhm.
It's the educational aspect of it is very important for us.
I think it is and it's a good thing. I think you're doing good work, because the nah, I'm not listening kind of thing is just gonna get us into more trouble. It's getting with politics, with religion, with everything else. It's like I really enjoy um trying to drill down on even people that I might start disagreeing with, or start thinking, but I love to drill down and find out, well, why? Well, why do you feel this way? And the funny thing that happens is, usually when you take the time to sort of drill down, you get to a more honest conversation, because they're so used to not having anyone listen that they can't even often explain why they feel that way anymore, and they've never had to.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I feel X. I'm for X. Y is great. X is well. Okay, great. Well, I hate Y, and that's the end of the conversation. As to okay, so what is it about Y? Like, I'm genuinely curious. Why do you like Y? And okay, and what more? Like, so Y is because of this, and Y is because of that. Okay, and where do you think that comes from? And they're like, they get starting to get confused because no one's drilled down. I remember I talked to somebody the other day, and it's a guy, Caucasian fellow who graduated, worked very hard, became an engineer, raised a family, did all those things you're supposed to be, graduated, 1960, became an engineer, worked, built a life, got grandkids, the whole thing, who really had a hard time with people of other faiths or other religions or other racial backgrounds. And I'm like, why is that? She says, well, I worked hard and they're getting it for free. I'm like, drilled down. And I said, so do you remember the day that you graduated school? Yeah, of course. I remember the day you got your master's. Can you picture it in your mind? It's okay. Look around in your mind and tell me what those people look like. Of course, it was, 95% white men with 5% maybe white women. And now imagine if you were a gay Buddhist African American. Do you think you would have had the same, having done everything the same? Do you think your life would have been the same? And even he realizes, oh no, I guess not. Because no one thinks about where they came from. They think about it's like right now as a man, it really sucks to be going through film festivals because, and I think it's necessary, we have to deal with some of the systemic racism, some of the systemic sex. So I have no problem, but it is actually less likely to get into a film festival as a man with the color of my skin right now than it is. And I have no problem with that. I really genuinely don't. It needs to happen because we have to compensate. We have to deal with these things that happen. But it's the reality of the situation. We have to go to deal with these things. Affirmative actions is something that has to happen for a while. But you have to tell the whole story, or otherwise, if all you're doing is, well, right now it's so unfair. Yeah, but you're not putting history. With history, it's not fair. For me right now, it seems unfair. But if I put it in the context of history, it's totally fair. So you have to have that sense of history and that sense of openness to understand what it's like to walk in other people's shoes to truly understand them.
Agreed.
And I think you kind of hit it there. As a society, I feel like we're losing empathy. With a lot of people say, oh no, I feel sorry for that person. No, that's sympathy. You can be sad that something happened to them, but unless you're feeling and putting yourself in their shoes, that's empathy. That is, and as a society, we don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And what are we doing to make it better?
Yeah, well, right now, it's our politicians want to make it worse because they want to capitalize on this selfish need of, well, right now things aren't as good for me. But they don't understand that it's only fair and it's only just that my ancestors did some horrible stuff, and it's time to pay the piper. And it's only fair that people that didn't have the advantages are given. We try to make up for some of these things. It's only fair, and I think we have to. If we think about that, then we can accept it. But otherwise, we're going to just be selfish little monsters that all we think about is, I want my cookie now. I don't care that I've always had cookies. I want my cookie. It's you have to have history. You have to have empathy. You have to have compassion. All of those things. Those beautiful Christian ideas.
Yes.
Yeah. That. Well, unfortunately, a lot of Christians do not like to.
Adhere to.
Yeah.
Obey.
I've often wondered. God's got to be pretty upset about some of the things that humans have done in His name. I would say.
I would say, yeah.
He's just not a happy camper,
I guess they'll get they'll get a talking to.
I would imagine.
I hope so. I think we're all
gonna get it. Yeah.
None of us are perfect.
Exactly. We're all gonna get it.
Yeah.
Do you have further questions for us?
I guess I am just in the. So, is there anything in the Bible specifically that makes you, like you were talking about? What chapter was it? Samaria.
Solomon.
Song of Solomon.
Solomon. Yeah, Songs of Solomon.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I want to look that one up. Okay. Is there any that's the sort of the one that kind of like.
That's the one that is it's a love story. It's a love
Hmm.
story in the Bible, and it's not like graphic where, oh, he's banging her, that, but he talks about the beauty of this woman and her breasts and this and that. So that right there goes to show that God wants us to enjoy
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
relationship. But when I was going through, and you go through like the giving of the law, because you got the Ten Commandments, and then it goes into this whole thing afterwards with all of the laws. I mean, everyone likes to focus on the Ten Commandments, but there's way more to it than that.
Hmm.
It's very, very specific, about everything, what you can and can't do, not just about sex, but just life. He was very specific. You can do this, you can't do that. Here's the punishment. It spells it all out. And when you go through this list of what you can and can't do, BDSM, I mean, there's nothing about,
Hmm.
if you're having sex within
Hmm.
the boundaries of marriage, knock yourself out,
Hmm.
basically. As
Hmm.
long as you're not, like banging animals, and
Hmm. Hmm.
there's no
Well,
restrictions.
they can't give consent, so
They can't. No.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
no, that's
But
covered under the consent rule.
Yeah.
so yeah, it's really, once you get past what religion tries to use to control the
Yeah,
population, and you
sure.
dig into it with yourself, uh, yeah, it's very. I
No,
mean,
I can see it. I feel like there's something there. It's an interesting,
Well, and
it's an
also
interesting thing.
it shows it's throughout the Bible. It shows from a dynamic power exchange perspective. There's always the head of the household.
yeah,
Hmm.
and it even tells the wives to submit to your husband,
Hmm. Hmm.
as you would to Christ.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So there is a very much a power exchange dynamic that goes on there. The problem is when people, especially women, when they hear submit,
Hmm.
that's like a curse word. Oh, I ain't submitting to no man. Ain't no man gonna rule over me. But they don't quite understand what that really means to submit. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
let the guy walk all over you and abuse you. You know,
Hmm.
it's just a natural order of, God first, your spouse second.
Hmm.
There's an order. It's just like having a job. You have CEOs and managers and workers.
Hmm.
It's really, when we dug into it, this lifestyle is exactly what God kind of prescribed in the Bible,
Right.
just
Hmm.
not those
Hmm. Interesting.
words, you know.
Interesting. Interesting.
So
And what about, I hope I'm not getting myself into too much trouble, but I'll be the devil's advocate for a second because I'm genuinely curious. What if you're a Buddhist? Are you going to hell?
so according to our beliefs and our faith, when you die, you stand before God to
Hmm.
give an accounting of yourself. And at that time, that's between you and God to decide
Right.
what's going
So
to
you
happen.
could, if you were a good person and led a good life,
You could
doesn't
just
really like
say,
matter.
yeah, you could
Yeah.
say, look, I believe, and
Hmm.
that's the way the Bible describes it. Is, I mean, it was a perfect example with Jesus on the cross, where it was him and two criminals next to him, and they didn't believe in anything, and then at the end they believed in him, and he's like, then
Hmm.
you'll be with me, you know.
Hmm. But what if they don't realize that till they're actually dead?
You
Like, I
still,
mean, there are people, I've traveled the world, there are people, believe it or not, that have never heard of
yeah,
Christianity still. Are all those people screwed?
no, absolutely not.
But they're good people. That was always the problem I had, is like all these amazing people I met, different religions and stuff, that really led beautiful, amazing lives. But,
Yep.
their dude was Muhammad, or their dude was Buddha, or their dude was,
At the end of it all, the Bible tells us when we die, that's when the decision is made. When we die,
when
we
okay.
stand before Him. And up to that moment, when you're standing before Him, nothing's been decided. It's when you're
Right.
standing before Him, you're already dead, you're there,
So theoretically, if you were a good person and never even heard of the this, but you still lived a good, honest life and respectful, and you should be okay.
Theoretically, I
Maybe.
mean,
I
if you
mean,
want to,
that's again the hard decision,
well,
I suppose,
no,
but
no,
that's a good answer. I've never heard it put that way. That's good. I
you're
like that.
kind of right on the path though. But theoretically, you can take it one step further. You don't even have to be a good person and have lived a good life. Theoretically, according to the Bible and what the Bible says, you could have been the worst person in the world, and you die, you still stand before Him. At that point, you can repent and ask for forgiveness, and if you truly mean it in your
Interesting.
heart,
Right.
it's a done deal. That's the God that we believe in. That's the God we have faith in. That's the God that I've read about in the Bible.
Okay.
You, some people's like, well, that's not fair. Well, hey, if I would do that with my child, if he treated me like crap his whole life, and then he truly came back to me and said, look, Dad, I'm sorry. I am truly sorry for everything I've done. Why would I turn him away or her? And if that's me, how much more love would God have for me?
Yeah, of course.
He doesn't
No,
want to
that's
see any of us, go down the wrong path.
right.
But He gave us free will to choose everything.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and we also feel, based on previous conversations that we've had, that even though we say God and, we have other religions that have a higher power, they all are very consistent with what that higher power represents. And so for us, it's God. For them, it's a different word, but it's the same person.
Right. I was wondering about that too. Is just like trying to be our higher selves, our better selves, and people use different words to describe
Right.
it.
Yep.
yeah, the only difference is with Christianity, we have Christ,
Yeah.
Mhm.
who was a living, breathing person,
Mhm.
and God all at the same time. And, the way is through Him for salvation. And He said, Christ Himself said, like I said, at any time through your life or after you die, up until the point where you're standing before them,
You choose.
you can choose at any time. So
It is amazing to me that all the world's religion, almost all the world religions, actually, it's just it's connected. It's like a family. Like Jesus was a Jew.
mhm.
Uh, in Christianity, and for us, that's for most Christians, that's where it ends. Unless you're a Mormon, then you believe in, I don't remember the next guy was like whatever. But the
Smith.
Muslims also, Smith, is that what it was? Right.
Yeah.
Smith, yeah.
The I know in Islam, in the Quran, Jesus, they speak of Jesus. In fact, Mary is very important. She's a great example of a beautiful or a pure woman. She's actually more celebrated in the Quran, which is interesting to me. That it just seems to be this debate about
Well,
which prophet is the last prophet.
because what happened there is with Muslims. So in the Bible, with Abraham and Sarah,
Mhm.
God told
Male and
Abraham,
Isaac.
yeah, He said, "You'll have a son. You'll name him Isaac, and he will be who I will build my path through." Well, he ended up getting Hagar pregnant and had Ishmael, and that's where it split. Up until that
Right.
point, it was the same religion. Ishmael went this way,
Yeah.
and you have the
Yeah.
Muslims, and Isaac went this
Yeah.
way, and you have the Christians.
Yeah.
So it's really the
Yeah.
same thing, you
Yeah.
know.
Just
Just
different.
different. Just
Yeah,
the
we
same
got
but
Christ,
different.
and they got Allah, and but
Yeah.
we all started with the same God.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that like why the what I believe in a higher power. And the only reason I don't want to give him a name is because I just have so many friends all over the world that I can't imagine are going to hell because they call him
Yeah,
this and somebody else calls him
I
that. That's
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that always stops me is like I lived in Lebanon for a number of years and really got to know some Muslim people very, very closely and got to know them. And they're just such beautiful, good people,
yes, they are. Yes.
really honest, sincere. It's not like what you see on TV. I mean, they did a lot of stuff that the crazy shit they did was out of a level of desperation that hopefully we'll never know. you
Yeah.
Well,
know?
and a lot of what you see on TV is just the extremists.
Yep.
There's
Yeah.
Christian extremists too. You know,
Christian, exactly.
extremists are just, they're the worst representation of
Yeah, exactly.
anybody.
But
So,
they get the loudest voice, though, don't they?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. It's always nice to have this is I am genuinely interested in all things, and there is something about, because some people like you experience in the kink community think that it's one or the other, and I don't believe that at all. I think you can see the beauty in everything if you look.
Absolutely.
And, the hard, at absolute minimum, obviously you would believe a lot more, but at absolute minimum, it's a beautiful idea to love and have compassion and have connection and try it. At minimum, it's that. Nobody should argue that. At
Exactly.
maximum, obviously, it's the absolute perfect truth. And that's possible too. But I mean, the
Yeah.
worst case scenario ain't that bad.
No,
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. Well said, Max. Well said. Well,
I think we're
I think
good.
we're done. And feel free, Max, if you would like to talk to us more, reach out to us. It'd be great, to follow up later and see what you're doing, and maybe promote some more of your projects. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to see what the next one is. Maybe I'll end up doing an episode on the intersection of religion and kink. That's interesting.
That would be really, really
That'd be
good.
fun.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck finding
It's not.
Christians.
It's not as uncommon as you'd imagine. One of the things that really shocked me was visiting a Tibetan monastery, and the Tibetans have a tradition of debate. Basically in the monasteries, all they do is debate their religion all day long.
Oh,
They have a sort of pack, and when a monk gets a little sleepy or lazy, the head monk slaps him across the whatever with a thing, and you hear it all the time, like help. I mean, these guys are like dominatrixes to the little monk guy. I'm like, because you think of these like supposed to be these peaceful little Buddhas, right? They're like, whack. Okay, are you awake now? And apparently the Dalai Lama also taught that way. It's like, it's not like most DOMs, you don't hit in anger.
right.
You hit in play or to accomplish whatever. And that does have a way of waking up the monks. So, there's something to it if it's done. Again, it's not, if you do something, you cane somebody and it's for their own good, maybe there's something to it.
There's something to it.
Wakes up the kittens, too.
Yeah, it does.
All right.
All right, Max. Well, take care, and we'll be keeping in touch with you if that's okay.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thanks,
Thanks, Max.
All
All
right.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was it. That was the interview. We hope you really enjoyed it. We are going to put some links below for you to get in touch with Max and check out this film. And check out our Facebook page, the Kinky Christian Podcast, that will also have the information you need and links to keep up with the film and see where it's at and when and where it's going to be released. So
Hopefully we'll have that information pretty soon. That'd be great.
yeah,
But we would really like to thank Max for his time. It was a joy to get to know you on a personal level, and to see where your heart was for this project and what we anticipate to see very, very near future.
yeah, we'll definitely be following you too, Max. So
Yeah. Thank you very much.
so thanks for your time and your film and your heart, man. So I think that's about it for this episode. You got anything more to say, Kitten?
I don't think I do.
Okay. Well, until next time, take care of each other, and God bless.